if you could have only one amp, I'd like to know what it would be. For me, I'm thinking that this Deluxe Reverb could be something that could basically replace all the amps that I particularly have owned. And the ones that I've owned, I've sort of pared down for a much bigger collection of stuff that I didn't use. Deluxe Reverb reissue might be a good candidate for that one amp sort of trick. This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Right, it took a while for me to figure this out, but I think I've settled it down to if there was one amp that I could get rid of all of my other amps, not that I have loads anymore, but you know, I've got a Fender Pro Reverb, which has two EV speakers in it, so this is an original kind of 65, 66 blackface. and yeah, it has 2 EV speakers in it. It's super heavy. I've got the Rift handmade kind of matchless Lightning clone. I've got, you know, things that I don't really count as tube amplifiers, like the Catalyst and the Katana, because obviously they're out of tubes. And I've got, actually, Tony from up the road is borrowing my Head First kind of Dirty Shirley clone. I think the Deluxe Reverb could be an ideal candidate for really the only amp you might need. So the story for me with this one goes, I've said to my buddy David Beebe, David Beebe got a Deluxe Reverb years ago, still hasn't done a video on it, why not? He got his, I think, for £800, kind of a post-lockdown, someone sort of just selling it. It had not really been used a ton. This looks to be in immaculate condition pretty much as well. And I'd said if one came up for that sort of price around me, I'd be really tempted to try it. JakeLoosemore, my good buddy, has been working with that pedal show, and they've got a Deluxe Reverb. It's literally the same, you know, 1965 Deluxe Reverb reissue. Nothing fancy or anything, and he fell in love with it. And then he saw this one come up in Weymouth for £850, so Weymouth is about an hour away, I think. He said, you know, have you got any money to buy this? So I put in 600 quid, I think he put in 250, so we now have a shared custody amp. He needed an amp because his Sir Bella needed rebiasing and stuff, and he's got another Fender Dual Professional, which the reverb tank isn't working on. So this is the downside of tube amps, is that essentially where we live, the southwest, it's really not that easy to find a reliable amp tech that can work on your stuff quickly, and it's getting more difficult. These guys are getting older, some of them are retiring, some of them are falling unfortunately into bad health, so as your tube amp needs working on, there's less and less people, it seems to me, that are able to work on them. All of that aside, so I gigged with Jake, and I've watched Jake gigging it a couple of times as well, and it sounds incredible. I think he runs it on like 3, the volume between 3 and 3.5, and that is plenty loud enough for gigging. I'll show you it in a couple of contexts with Jake playing it. It sounds incredible. I got it home and I was like, right, let's try this thing, and it is kind of the dream Fender clean. And why I say this is maybe the only amp you might need is that I think so many of us use pedals for the other stuff anyway, and potentially some of you guys might be into the channel switching thing, or you might have tried it and gone away from it. You might have, you know, maybe in the 80s been a channel switcher. Let me know if that is you guys. I certainly started off kind of in this channel switching kind of mentality from my Marshall AVT, before that a crate amp, and then went into my Mesa Boogie phase, starting off with the Nomad 45. And I kind of like the idea of a channel switching amplifier, but I'm not convinced that it's necessarily the way that most of the world seems to want to go. And these came out in 1965, and I think still sound pretty incredible today. Let's just take a little bit of a listen. So I wanted to try a couple of pedals in front of it. I haven't even plugged a pedal in front of it yet, but here we've got the clean channel with the treble at 5, bass at 5, and the volume at about 2. And it's just a beautiful starting point. Just straightforward, like clean. Let's go into the vibrato side. Similar sort of settings. This side is a little bit less. More inclined, I think. To get a little bit on the thin side. But that could be what you're after as well. So if you just turn the treble down and maybe the bass up. Come alive there. Okay, I've got a tube screamer here. Well, that's not a good sound, is it? Jake said that side kind of gets a little bit on fizzier side, whereas the normal kind of takes pedals, I think, a bit better. But we could also go into the padded side of the vibrato channel. I think this maybe will respond a bit better, and also drop. So I think for me, kind of half of the amp that I'm interested in is a Jam Rattler. So just turn that tone down a bit, turn the gain down a bit. So now hitting the normal channel with a Jam Rattler. So I think if you were looking for some sort of really, really heavy tones, then of course the Deluxe Reverb is not going to be the way that you're going to go, and possibly even you wouldn't go for any amp at all. But I'm guessing something like a rev generator, something like a Mesa Boogie, dual rectifier, triple rectifier, you know, I guess even those are out of fashion these days. Maybe something like a PV, Invective, you know, an EVH 5153. Maybe those amps would be the way to go. But for people that are more or less thinking like, I need something I can play at home and get some good tones out of, can take it to a gig and compete at gig volume with a drummer, you know, up 3 and 4 is literally like gig volume. Beyond that would be wild. You know, something that could really do jazz very well. You know, Jonathan Kreisberg, Elad Hexelman, Eric Johnson, Robin Ford, Michael Landau, you know, you name it. Name your favourite Deluxe Reverb players. I think this could be the only amp I would ever need. I wish you could get something which was just the normal channel in like a head format. You know, you think this kind of side of the amp I don't really even need. And I think it doesn't sound quite as good as the normal channel. So I'd happily pay for a deluxe just by itself without all this other stuff. So let me know if you can think of something which could do that job or something that already exists. It's a little bit frustrating that anytime I'm looking for a Deluxe Reverb, I just see a ton of Fender Tone Master Deluxe Reverbs that are about the same price, if not a little more, than what I could pick up a Deluxe Reverb reissue for. But I think a cracking amp, and for £850, I think you'd be hard pushed to find something that kind of gets you in that kind of dream Fender world quite so easily. I think a VHT D50 is a candidate for a really good amp, but not quite as kind of glassy, Fendery as this. I think it's quite a fantastic sound. Obviously, that's why people use a Fender Deluxe Reverb. So I'm now plugged into the vibrato channel, but my buddy John March said that he'd learned this trick from Robin Ford in terms of when you're using like the second channel of a Fender, because this actually has an extra gain stage in the form of half a tube, I think, which feeds the reverb, or it might be a whole tube, I can't remember exactly, but what that means is you can it's a little bit less harsh. You know, if you're finding that channel too bright, it's like quite loud, like that's probably that reverb is going wild as well. This channel definitely overdrives easier than the other as well. Myself and Jake had assumed that we might need to change the speaker in this, but actually a really decent kind of get that up volume wise. Kind of getting the power tubes cooking a bit more. I definitely think that second part of that vibrato channel, the second input, might actually be, yeah, significantly worth checking out if you're looking for those kind of more full. Definitely wants to break up. So the right hand side for the glassier tones, the left hand side for more clean tones. It's kind of what I'm learning about this amp.